Happy Monday, Nation citizens, and welcome into the Monday Mailbag video edition. Every Monday over at Oilersnation, our esteemed panel of writers give you their takes on the biggest questions surrounding the Edmonton Oilers, and now I'm here to do it for you in video form. So let's kick things off with the first question in our mailbag. We've seen the Oilers have back-to-back losing streaks of 6 games and now 5 games. If this disastrous run isn't enough to see some kind of change within the organization, then what is? And my response to that is exactly. If this run isn't enough to bring Ken Holland to make some sort of big change, like firing the head coach, then I'm not sure what exactly would bring him to do that, because this really does kind of feel like rock bottom for the Edmonton Oilers. So if anything, I think these 2 losing streaks show us that Ken Holland really is committed to the patient approach when it comes to this hockey team. And I'm not sure if he is going to pull the trigger on a coaching change, regardless of what happens this coming weekend against Ottawa. I'm sure Ken Holland would love to go out and make a big splashy trade that he knows will improve this team. But that's just not necessarily out there right now. The trade market in the NHL is incredibly quiet. There's not big moves happening. Now, maybe it's starting to heat up a little bit because we're hearing a little bit more talk about guys like Jacob Chychrun and Lawson Crouse. Even John Klingberg out in Dallas has requested a trade, but I'm just not sure if a deal is in the cards. And sometimes when you make a trade just for the sake of making one and for the sake of change, that's how you end up trading Ryan Strome for Ryan Spooner or Drake Caggiula for Brandon Manning. So, these 2 losing streaks, they're ugly. But I think right now, if you're sitting and holding your breath, you shouldn't be holding your breath for Ken Holland to go make a big change in this moment. And I think this Oilers team is just going to have to play themselves out of the pickle that they're in. Our second question in the mailbag comes from Ed, who asks a bit of a long one. He says, I think it's fair to say that the Oilers are a less physical team than a year ago. The loss of Larson is part of it, but I'm wondering what the crowd thinks of swapping Derek Ryan for Jujhar Khaira. Ryan has to be rated as a disappointment. He is certainly not a guy that can give you 10 minutes a night of low-stress hockey. About the only thing he seems to bring to the team is a good right-handed draw guy. That helps the PK. Khaira, like a lot of big guys, was not a gem of consistency, but could play big boy hockey. Today, would you rather have Ryan or Khaira? Khaira was just so hot and cold, and I'm going to disagree a little bit with Ryan's inability to give you 10 minutes a night of low-stress hockey. He had a really rough stretch there for a little bit, but everyone in the bottom 6 was playing bad hockey at that point. I think Derek Ryan, when he's at his best, I'd rather have that because, again, I just don't think Jujhar Khaira in his time here brought enough consistency. The concussion issues would scare me away from making that deal as well. Jujhar Khaira, I mean, the guy was knocked out, what was that, a month and a half ago? So I'm not sure if that's a deal I would really consider. Really, the Oilers' lack of physicality, that could be solved simply by guys in their lineup stepping up a little bit. If Zach Kassian consistently brought some physical edge, that would go a long way in solving the problem. If Colton Sevier consistently brought the body more, even a guy like Ryan McLeod, who's playing as their third line center right now, I think those are all players. I'll throw Zach Hyman in that conversation as well, put him in the mix. If those guys bring their physicality and bring that element on a more consistent basis, then this Oilers team might not have as big of an identity crisis as they do now, where no one seems to lay a body check. No one seems to care when they're losing. No one seems to want to change the momentum. So really, I don't think a trade is the solution here. Maybe a deal will come, and maybe that's something Ken Holland wants to address before the deadline. But I think this is on the guys in the room to fix that issue for the Oilers. Our third question comes from Trent, who says, how realistic is it to get a starting goalie in season? Are we forced to shoring up the 2-3 lefty, the 2-3 right wing, or getting a 3 center and hoping the fancy stats boost leads to better results? It's not very realistic to expect Ken Holland to go out and get a goalie in the middle of the season because there's not that many out there. Carey Price is not a realistic target. Marc-Andre Fleury is not a realistic target right now. You're basically looking at Alexander Georgiev or Jonas Korpisalo. Korpisalo's not a solution. Georgiev, isn't guaranteed to be a solution, but he's definitely the most intriguing name out there, and his age as well makes me more inclined to go after a guy like that. But I don't think it's super realistic that Holland's going to go make a big Dwayne Rollison-esque splash at the NHL trade deadline. I do think it's more likely that he goes out and gets a left-handed defenseman, adds some depth scoring, and maybe just the team being better in front of the blue paint leads to the goaltending numbers going up a little bit as well. And in turn, wins starting to come and this team starting to go on a bit of a roll. The fourth question we got is from Mark, who says the Oilers are currently being severely outscored at 5-on-5 when McDavid and Draisaitl aren't on the ice. And I'd like to ask everyone what ideas you have to fix the problem. Is this all a personnel issue? Deployments? What would you like to see the Oilers do to get more scoring at even strength? Jason Gregor did a fantastic job laying out some numbers in his answer over at Oilers Nation, and I can flash those up for you right now. But it's pretty clear that consistent scoring is an issue in the bottom six for the Oilers. Maybe it's gotten a little bit better as of late, as you can see from the numbers from Gregor, but I think it's both personnel and a little bit of deployment. We've seen Ryan McLeod play really good hockey, yet he barely gets minutes. Against Toronto last week, Brendan Perlini scored a goal, still played the least amount out of all Oilers forwards in that hockey game. Even a guy like Tyler Benson's been playing some great hockey lately, and he had success in his short stint with Ryan McLeod, just like they had a ton of success in the American League when they played on the same line, but yet they're not consistently playing together. So I do think that this bottom six was built a certain way, and it's maybe not being deployed properly. The results have been getting a little bit better as of late. Part of that's out of necessity with a guy like Connor McDavid out of the lineup for their last game against Toronto, but I do think it's a blend of personnel and the way that personnel is being deployed. Our last question in the Monday mailbag came from David, who said, as we enter the college football bowl season, love a little college bowl talk, the new trend is for top prospects to start bailing on their teams to avoid potential injury before the draft. With the World Juniors looking likely to be rescheduled for much closer to the draft, do you think there's any chance this trend moves to the hockey world? Example, could Shane Wright say, I don't want to risk getting hurt in the World Juniors because I got a draft coming up? And my response there is if it happens before the draft, I don't think you'll see a lot of guys bail. But if it happens later on in the summer, and the example Chris Peters, our prospect analyst at Daily Faceoff, gave was, what if a guy like Jake Sanderson is fresh off signing with the Ottawa Senators, and the Senators go, we have a rookie camp. We want you being healthy for the start of the season. We want you around our organization, not playing out at the World Juniors. And I very well think, even if it's after the draft and a guy like Shane Wright, he goes number 1 overall to the Arizona Coyotes, they might sit there and go, we don't want you going and risking injury before the season. We want you ready to be in our lineup for game 1. So maybe you could see it, but I do think at the end of the day, hockey culture and the idea of national pride and the fact it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to play at the World Juniors for your country, I do think that would be sort of the overwhelming feeling. And I do think a lot of guys would still go to the World Juniors. And I do think a lot of teams would not want to anger their top prospects and lay down a strong hand of, you're not going to play because we said so. So that's going to do it for the first ever Monday Mailbag video edition here at Oilers Nation. Don't forget to like for me. And also, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my answers next week as well. Just one Oilers game on the schedule in the next 7 days. It's expected to come on the weekend against Ottawa. Enjoy that, and we'll chat in a week.